Brian Kelly with his biggest flex yet about LSU's biggest weakness. Let's talk about this. Locked on LSU. Here we go.
You are Locked On LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked On LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks so much for making us your first listen. We are free, available wherever you get podcasts, of course, on YouTube as well. So please subscribe. As always, one of the fastest ways to help us grow is by leaving your comments below. So thank you sincerely for that. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. So, Brian Kelly met with reporters on Friday after the last media availability and spoke pretty candidly about two positions, the two positions that I and everyone roundly agree were the two biggest question marks coming into this season, one on each side of the ball, the offensive line and safety. You're going to hear what Brian Kelly had to say, and I'm going to give you some reaction to that as we move throughout the show. Now, the Tigers did scrimmage on Saturday in Tiger Stadium, and it was closed to the media. I did spend a good portion of the day Sunday trying to get as much info out of that scrimmage as I could, and there weren't a ton of notes, but I'm happy to share with you what I did here. We'll do that at the end of this episode. To be very honest, I didn't want to title this episode Scrimmage Notes and be misleading and have everyone think this was going to be a scrimmage report, because I don't have a full scrimmage report. I have a few little tidbits that I'll share with you at the end of today's episode. But when Brian Kelly met with reporters on Friday, he was asked about how the offensive line has progressed. And we've all talked about it a ton, right? I mean, if you're an everydayer, you've heard me say it just for the benefit of the folks who, maybe you're just joining us for the first time. LSU lost 4 starters off of last year's offensive line. They combined for 170 career games played. Will Campbell was a top 5 pick in the draft. Emory Jones was a 3-year starter at right tackle. Garrett Dellinger, Miles Frazier. Your lone returning starter, DJ Chester, started every game a season ago at center. And he was the number 1 interior offensive lineman in the country when he signed with LSU, but he's a natural guard. So this year he's moving to guard. So really you have 5 new starters. And a season ago, LSU was 107th in the country in rush offense. They were outstanding in pass protection. LSU allowed the 10th fewest sacks in the country a year ago, and consider that includes the service academies who don't throw the ball. So it's actually better than that among teams that actually try to have a passing game. So they were outstanding in pass protection, but LSU really struggled to establish a consistent running game. We've talked a lot. We actually had a previous episode. Would highly recommend you go listen if you missed it. A couple episodes ago where we talked to Cole Kublik of the SEC Network about why LSU might have struggled to run the ball, and maybe it wasn't all rooted in the offensive line. Anyway, my contention about this line so far through in the first 2 full weeks of fall camp, and everything I've seen, is that LSU has a very talented offensive line that has to learn how to play together, 5 playing as 1. They win one-on-one matchups. They struggle in team period, at least early in fall camp. This past week, when we got to watch them Monday, Tuesday in full team periods and full pad practice, 11-on-11s, they didn't allow a single pressure or a sack in the periods that we saw watching full 11-on-11. So that would suggest progress from this offensive line. Now, again, I've told you I'm confident in this offensive line because they have plenty of talent. It's a massive undertaking week 1, a massive undertaking for 5 new starters to go on the road in that environment. Clemson, a defensive line that's probably going to have 3 guys drafted in the NFL next year. Huge ask. Very unenviable task week 1. But Brian Kelly was asked about the progress his offensive line has made, and he took the opportunity to roll up his sleeves and flex.
I've coached, for a long time. I've had a lot of guys in the NFL, a lot of first-round draft picks. I think I got a pretty good eye for what an offensive line looks like. This group is going to be really good. We don't have a Will Campbell, right? He's the 5th pick in the draft. But we have 5 guys that play well together. And it starts with the center. Our center position and Braelin Moore kind of sets up the rest of the group for success. His combination work is outstanding. His recognition of fronts, getting us to be an elite offensive line. If you have a center that can kind of set the stage for that, it allows everything else to kind of fall into place, and it's starting to fall into place quite nicely.
It's falling into place quite nicely. I think about the comment Brian Kelly made there about Braelin Moore. And that's the thing that more than anything, I think stands out to me. Because if I were to tell you last year or ask you what was LSU's weakest link on the offensive line, across the board, we all would have said center. It was DJ Chester. And Chester's a very good player. He's a big physical offensive lineman. He was just playing out of position. And now you're talking about in the first day of fall camp, Brian Kelly definitively and demonstrably said at the podium that Braelin Moore was their center and everything else was open competition. So they have established from day one, Braelin Moore is the center, the guy that's going to make all the calls, set all the protections. By the way, something that's a bit understated through this entire fall camp, Braelin Moore has not had one errant snap in any of the team periods we've seen. Any team period. Braelin Moore has not had one errant snap. You're talking about a guy that has played in 28 games with 24 starts, who, by the way, did play last year on the road at Clemson for Virginia Tech. And in that game, his pass blocking grade was a 70.4, and his run blocking grade was a 63.3. His overall grade was a 66.4, which is pretty good. But that's according to Pro Football Focus, by the way. And when Brian Kelly says, and you could, if you're watching, he kind of had this smirk on his face, kind of scratching, his side a little braggadocious, but he's earned it. When Brian Kelly says, I've coached a long time, I've had a lot of offensive linemen drafted, he's right. When Brian Kelly was hired at his introductory press conference, if anybody has the interest to go back and look up Brian Kelly's introductory press conference, you can. There's two things I asked him in that press conference. One was about recruiting Louisiana, the appeal of Louisiana taking the LSU job, because during his time at LSU, he recruited Jerry Tillery from Evangel. He recruited Logan Diggs from New Orleans. Brian Kelly was familiar with Louisiana when he took the job. That was one. The second, I asked him about recruiting and developing on the offensive line. And offensive line, tight end are two spots that he has pumped guys into the NFL everywhere he's been more than any other position. And it's not bragging if you can back it up. And you look at Brian Kelly's time at Notre Dame and the offensive linemen that he put into the NFL draft from the time that he showed up there first in 2010, and then starts producing guys like Chris Watt, who was a third rounder, Zach Martin, who was a first rounder, Nick Martin, who was a second rounder, Ronnie Stanley, who was a first round draft pick offensive tackle, Mike McGlinchey, who was the 9th pick overall offensive tackle by the 49ers. Like, you get the point. Like, this is what Brian Kelly did during his time at Notre Dame. Even guys like Robert Hainsey, who was a third rounder, Aaron Banks, who was a second rounder, Liam Eichenberg, who was a second rounder. Even after he came to Baton Rouge, guys he had recruited there, like Jarrett Patterson, ended up in the NFL draft. The point is, that's always been a focus. Some coaches are, Lincoln Riley has pumped quarterbacks into the NFL. Like, that's what Lincoln Riley does. Brian Kelly, it's offensive line and tight ends. So if he tells me he thinks this offensive line is going to be pretty good, I'm inclined to believe him. And while the offensive line you lost combined for 170 career games played, if you look at your top 7 guys right now, Braelin Moore, Josh Thompson, DJ Chester, Tyree Adams, Weston Davis, and then the other 2 guys that are rotating in, Paul Mabenga and Cohen Eccles, those 7 have combined for 104 games played and 65 starts. That ain't nothing. It's not 170 games played, but it's still a significant number. They just haven't played together. And that's going to continue to be my contention, is that this offensive line has the talent to be really outstanding. They just got to learn to play as one. And the quicker that they can accelerate that learning curve, the better they'll be. And obviously, having your starting center in place is a massive jumpstart to that process, because that would be the guy making the calls, the person who's has his hand on the football every single snap. That's the guy that you want to make sure is in place first. It's the most critical component. And he also happens to be now your most experienced offensive lineman in Braelin Moore, who has been nearly flawless in this fall camp. Just something to watch. Maybe all of our angst is misplaced. Brian Kelly's that confident. We'll find out here in less than 2 weeks. Okay, the other side of the ball that we've talked a ton about is the safety position. Brian Kelly addressed that. You'll hear it next. Locked on LSU, your team every day. If you're trying to stay on top of your routine, whether that's workouts, long days on campus, or staying focused through back-to-back classes, hydration is where it all starts. And that's where Drip Drop comes in. When you're on top of your hydration, you'll notice everything works better. Energy, mood, focus, even your skin. Getting enough fluids, though, every day isn't always easy. That's why you will love Drip Drop. Drip Drop is doctor-developed and scientifically proven for fast hydration. It uses the perfect balance of sodium electrolytes and glucose to help your body absorb fluids quickly, delivering 3 times the electrolytes and half the sugar of a leading sports drink. So, right now, Drip Drop is offering Locked On listeners 20% off your first order. Just head to dripdrop.com and use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege. That's dripdrop.com, promo code LOCKEDONCollege for 20% off. Stock up now before the heat hits hard. So we talked about the offensive line. On the defensive side, the biggest question mark that LSU has by far is safety. They were atrocious on the back half, especially at safety a year ago. I had the Pro Football Focus grades pulled up from last year, the 2024 LSU season. When you just go to the bottom and work your way up, 41 players had a defensive grade for LSU a season ago on Pro Football Focus. Number 37 was Jordan Gilbert, who started 12 games for LSU. Only 4 players, and none of them were full-time players. Kimo Makanaioli, J.K. Johnson, Jalen Lee, Xavier Atkins. Those are the only players that graded lower than Jordan Gilbert. He graded a 54 by Pro Football Focus. The 33rd graded player by LSU, just by Pro Football Focus, just 4 spots ahead of Jordan Gilbert, Major Burns at a 57. Y'all, LSU last year at safety was awful. There's no other way to say it. And it's not to say guys didn't try hard. For what it's worth, Sage Ryan, who played safety for LSU a year ago, is the 7th highest rated defensive player. His overall grade was a 69.9, but in run defense, he was a 51.7. Actually, the reason that his grade skewed so high is in pass rush, he was an 81.5. The bottom line is, this was a real challenge for LSU. A defense that at that position over the last quarter century has produced LaRon Landry, Eric Reed, Jamal Adams, Grant Delpit. I mean, incredible football players at safety have come through this program. And even guys that maybe didn't have a long, sustained, decorated NFL career, but were amazing college football players. Guys like Brandon Taylor, who wore the number 18 jersey on that 2011 defense. And last year was bad. Now, I'm inclined to look and say Jordan Gilbert was playing with a dislocated shoulder. I can't wait to see what a healthy Jordan Gilbert might look like this year. Major Burns was a physical player who was a real liability at times in coverage for LSU. As a matter of fact, his grade in a pass rush was an 85, but his run defense and tackling grades were 55. His coverage grade was a 54. The only thing that even made him remotely competent was his pass rush grade. When I look now and I go, you're exchanging Major Burns for Harold Perkins. When I look and go, Sage Ryan is gone and you're bringing in Sage Ryan and Jordan is gone and you're bringing in AJ Haulcy and Jordan Gilbert maybe is playing backup star right now and you're placing with a guy like Tamarcus Cooley from NC State. You've increased your talent at every position at safety. And it's something Brian Kelly lauded as well on Friday.
Communication starts back at the safety position. And I think we've got two guys that do a great job back there. I think Deshaun has grown immensely in his communication back there. And Javion, along with, Tamarcus and certainly AJ, those four guys have done a really good job of getting us lined up, communicating effectively, which has in fact made it, from a perception standpoint, look like, there's a lot more continuity and consistency with the group because they're doing a really good job. We're really running, until Jakeem had a little bit of a pull, we're running 6 corners out there. And that's a lot. So you better have great communication. I think your question is grounded in, I think the ability to coordinate things on the back end starts with the safeties and their communication, and it's been really good.
That's something that was lacking a year ago. Now, I'm not trying to read too much into what Brian Kelly said, but keep in mind he mentioned 4 players. He said it starts, we got 2 guys doing a really good job with communication. He was talking about Haulcy and Cooley, and he said, also Spears and Toviano have done a really good job taking big steps this year, in addition to the guys who are at the front with Cooley and Haulcy. Notice he mentioned those 4. He did not mention Jordan Gilbert. Jordan Gilbert is a guy who probably has gotten past at this point. Now, Gilbert, it's fair to mention, has been running back up at the star position. Now, Jordan Gilbert is not going to take Harold Perkins' job. And I would submit, we've even talked about it in a previous episode, that the 2 most irreplaceable guys on LSU's entire defense are Harold Perkins and Whit Weeks. Because after that, you just don't have a player at that position that even is remotely close to their caliber. Like, you don't want to have an injury at corner, obviously. But let's say hypothetically Stamps and Delane start and something were to happen. Well, DJ Pickett's standing right there, and he's a 5-star freak show, and he's better than most every corner in the country already. And he's only going to keep getting better and better and better. So you have great depth at a lot of places, including at safety, with what you were able to bring in with Tamarcus Cooley and AJ Haulcy. And I'll continue to say it, but AJ Haulcy's a guy that has played a ton of football. AJ Haulcy last year, or in his career, I should say, AJ Haulcy has played in 36 games with 33 starts. If you look at his Pro Football Focus grade from a year ago, he graded out overall at an 80.5. 80.5. I just told you LSU's highest graded safety was Sage Ryan. He was in the 60s. The point is, Sage Ryan was a 69.9, and that's because it was skewed because his pass rush grade was an 81.5. Gilbert was a 54.7. Major Burns was a 57.7. Even some of the rotational guys, Deshaun Spears was a 61.7. I just got to telling you that AJ Haulcy was an 80. He graded out at an 80.5. He's incredible. And by the way, his coverage grade was his highest at an 85.5. Y'all, you've dramatically increased your talent at these spots. Offensive line. I shouldn't say you've dramatically increased your talent on the offensive line because you were very talented a year ago, but you've replenished. Safety, you have dramatically increased your talent and experience at safety. And you should be better at both of those spots. And I think Brian Kelly knows it. Now, Tigers scrimmaged in Tiger Stadium. They're going to need it, by the way, in a couple of Saturdays when they go to Clemson. Brian Kelly had the Tigers scrimmage Saturday in Tiger Stadium. I was able to get a few tidbits that I'll share with you, and one other soundbite from Brian Kelly about another transfer who continues to make waves. You'll hear that next. Locked on LSU, your team every day. Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with friends or family? Maybe it's game day. All of a sudden you realize you want to be in the stands. Well, that's exactly where Game Time comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last-minute tickets without the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch, or even invite a bigger group to come with you. Game Time makes it possible. Game Time makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually drop the closer you get to first pitch. And they've got incredible last-minute deals, clear seat views, and a lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying. Game Time is the official ticketing partner of Locked On MLB, making it easy to browse the app for exciting upcoming MLB games. And seat views right in the app before you buy, so you know exactly where you'll be. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem with the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. So LSU scrimmaged on Saturday night in Tiger Stadium. The scrimmage was closed to the media, so I was not there. Full disclosure. Brian Kelly wanted the team to practice on a Saturday night in the stadium with the video boards lit up, the ribbon boards, all of it to simulate as best they could a night game that they're going to face when they play Clemson. And just if you're not familiar with how the practices are all lining up, once they acclimatized, they've been practicing 6 days a week with a recovery day on Sunday. So the second week was 6 days, recovery day on Sunday. This week was 6 days, recovery day on Sunday. And then the final week of fall camp will be 6 days with a recovery day on Sunday. Then Monday is the first day of school when they begin it's game week for Clemson. So that's how it sort of lines up. We have been given our media availability for the final week of fall camp. We'll get about 3 periods to watch on Monday. On Tuesday, we'll get to watch the entire practice, and then that's it. That'll be our last viewing for fall camp, which then, of course, LSU will head toward getting ready, full bore for Clemson. A couple of the notes, most importantly, is that they did really physical work and came away with no injuries. As I was told, there was no starter, no platoon starter. So among the rotational guys, nobody significant to LSU who's going to be a significant contributor against Clemson suffered any injuries. And my response to that, and I do think that's significant. If you'd noticed, look, sometimes just in football, injuries happen, man. Jam Miller, the running back from Alabama, reportedly has a collarbone issue. He's going to miss, the opener against Florida State, likely until conference play. I'm not rooting for anybody to be injured. That sucks. It's just part of football, though. And a lot of times you have soft tissue injuries. But I think Jake Flint and his staff deserve a tremendous amount of credit for what they did this offseason and summer. I think Dallas Boyette and his training staff, Morgan Acosta, the nutrition staff at LSU, all factor in. And then the way Brian Kelly built out this schedule with recovery days and the acclimation period, he said it day one about they have all this data about how to ramp up and slowly ramp up and acclimatize, because the first 7 days are the highest incident rate of soft tissue injuries they have had up until this point. The only one that I know of is the slight hamstring pull that Shaquem Jackson had. Other than that, you've had no soft tissue injuries through 3 weeks of camp, which is incredible. And that really does speak to all the support staff being experts at their jobs. And then, you've had a little bit of luck, right? The fact that you haven't had an ankle rolled or somebody take a hit the wrong way. It's football. So you've had a really good combination of those things. I was told that the defensive depth was probably the biggest standout component of the scrimmage. That defensive depth is really showing. And Brian Kelly said routinely he does not want to name starters. Told me that on Friday, that he wants to keep the competition going. And that's something they lacked a year ago. Just consider what I just told you in the previous segment. Jordan Gilbert was a starting safety for a year ago. He's probably a backup star this year. The defensive depth is showing. Absolutely. Damian Ramos, I was told, was perfect on his field goal attempts, which is fantastic news as well. And the special teams continue to really shine. Grant Chadwick is an improvement at punter. Aaron Burrell is basically an automatic touchback. Barry Brown and Xavion and Aaron Anderson are the three primary returners right now. Maybe it'll be Xavion on punts, Barry Brown, Aaron Anderson on kickoffs. We'll see how they elect to do it, but you've got a lot of key guys. And one other thing to consider is when you have that much talent and depth, it allows you to improve the talent on your special teams units as well. Guys that could be starters other places are now playing special teams for you, which only increases your ability there. So a lot of promise and potential on this team. And it should be. They paid for it. We're less than 2 weeks away from kickoff. We'll be right here every day on Locked on LSU. Hey, thanks so much for making this your first listen. Check out the Portal Show for your second listen. If you're on podcast, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Rate us, leave a review. If you're on YouTube, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video. And be sure to let a friend know as we count down to kickoff that if they love the Tigers, we got you here every single day for Locked on LSU, your team every day.